Wakefield Libraries are delighted with our collaboration with Dreamtime Creative, funded by the Arts Council, on the Suppressed Suffragettes Visible Visionaries project, which has provided a wonderful local angle to the British Library Living Knowledge Network Unfinished Business exhibition. This has been a great opportunity for us to connect the conversations on women's rights at a national level with the inspiring local stories of individual women who have played their role in our local heritage. We are grateful for the creativity that Dreamtime Creative have led to bring these stories to light using the funding we have shared, and we're even more delighted that it has enabled 2 permanent memorials in the form of blue plaques to notable women as part of the Forgotten Women of Wakefield campaign for blue plaque parity. We look forward to continuing to work in partnership with Dreamtime Creative to support the aim of blue plaque parity for the City of Wakefield by 2028. Thank you.
Hello, I'm looking at one of the 2 blue plaques we're going to be unveiling today. These plaques are a continuation of our Forgotten Women of Wakefield series that we've been working on with Dreamtime Creative. I say we've been working on it, they've been doing most of the work, to be fair, because there's been an awful lot of research gone on behind the scenes to get to a position where we can actually tell the stories of these women in this series. A few years ago, Sarah Cobham, director of Dreamtime Creative, got in touch with me and said, "How many blue plaques do you have in place now?" And at that time we were approaching the 50 mark. And she asked me how many of those plaques referenced or commemorated the lives of men. And when I counted up, it was around 30. "Well," she said, "how many commemorate the lives of women?" And at that point, I think we were at 4. Immediately you could see the problem. There's an imbalance between the number of plaques referencing men and the number of plaques referencing women. And Sarah threw down a challenge. She wants to achieve blue plaque parity, where we have the same number of plaques in place for women as we do for men. Well, we've now got over 60 plaques, and in fact we're on our way to achieving a target of 70. And I'm pleased to say that today's plaques are number 12 and 13 in the series, The Forgotten Women of Wakefield. So we're approaching the halfway mark when it comes to achieving that goal of blue plaque parity. Why we have so many plaques for men and so few for women is, of course, part of history itself. History tends to be written about or by the men who contributed to our history, whereas the lives of women are disregarded to an extent. Sarah's project has helped to unlock those stories, and she has discovered some of the women who have contributed to Wakefield's rich political, economic, social and cultural history. And these plaques are a really important part of that story because they help to bring those stories alive for the first time. Yes, you may have heard of some of these women before, but their stories have never been celebrated in this way in the past. So I hope you enjoy finding out about these 2 women, Lady Catherine Gaskell and Mary Frances Heaton, and enjoy seeing their plaques when they go in place. I want to thank everybody who's contributed to this project, the researchers, the property owners who've given permission for the plaques to go up and so forth, and of course the people who funded these plaques. Sarah will no doubt bring you up to speed on all that background in due course. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I hope you'll appreciate extenuating circumstances have intervened, and it's just not possible for me to be out and about at the moment. Enjoy the unveiling. I hope to see you again very soon, and we have more blue plaques to come, believe me. There's a long list of nominations out there which we're working on behind the scenes. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Hello, I'm Tony Stevenson, a volunteer researcher for the Forgotten Women of Wakefield. I've been researching Lady Catherine for 2.5 years now, and today I'm very excited to share her inspiring story with you. It's a shame we can't do this in person, but I hope this presentation and the speech I've put together you can enjoy virtually from your homes or wherever you are. So I personally came across the project whilst working a summer job in an independent cafe in Wakefield, Brews, Bites and Bubs, after I'd finished my first year of university studying history. Sarah Cobham, the CEO of Dreamtime Creative, who has probably already spoken this morning, and the architect of the Forgotten Women project, was a regular customer, and upon finding out I was a history student, asked if I'd be interested in carrying out some research. With all the free time the 3 months long summer gives a student, I jumped at the chance to get some practical experience, and was later given a slip of paper with the name Catherine Milnes Gaskell written on it, and is set free in Wakefield Library to find her. 2 years on, and a 70-page document timeline later, I get to share with you all why I find Lady Catherine such an inspiring figure, and hopefully in the process inspire you too. In the middle of Thornes Park in Wakefield stands the old Wakefield College campus. Now there are few signs of the stately home that once stood in its place. The victim of a fire in 1951, following a school production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, the remains of the original Thornes house now boast only a single wall. The legacy of the house as a school lived on past the loss of the grand building, but what was also buried, along with the original structure, was a local common knowledge of the family who once lived there, particularly its final resident, Lady Catherine Milnes Gaskell. Lady Catherine boasts an impressive list of achievements that include being a champion of social justice, one of the country's first female magistrates, the founder and president of Yorkshire's first St John's Ambulance Brigade, and the author and playwright of 9 published books. Until now, her achievements and contributions have been largely forgotten in the city where she dwelled, for a large part of her 43-year marriage. Small traces of her can be found in Wakefield, on information boards within and books about Thornes Park. However, none of them allude to the extraordinary life she led. So much so that despite the achievements listed, one of the only internet markers I could find on her when I started researching in 2018 was on her husband's Wikipedia page, stating that she was a minor author who invited to their home artistic and literary visitors who included Henry James and Thomas Hardy. So Lady Catherine was born on the 7th of December 1856, the eldest daughter of the 5th Earl of Portsmouth and the first cousin of the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, better known as the man who funded Howard Carter's Tutankhamun excavation. She spent most of her childhood at the family's home Eggesford House in Devon, where she received a less than conventional upbringing. Her parents' social circle consisted of literary icons and pre-Raphaelite artists, including the likes of Thomas Hardy, Henry James, and Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Lady Catherine made such an impression on Henry James that he wrote in a letter that she possessed a great deal of vivacity, spontaneity, and cleverness. A rose without a thorn, moreover, is Lady G, of whom you asked for a description. I can't give you a trustworthy one, for I really think I am in love with her. Her mother, Lady Portsmouth, was an avid campaigner for women's education and suffrage, having signed one of the first parliamentary petitions on women's rights to vote, along with an attached letter to prominent suffragist Millicent Fawcett. Lady Catherine herself was only 20 years old when she first moved to Wakefield, following her marriage in 1876 to Charles Milnes Gaskell of Thornes House, who later became MP for Morley. But considering both the staunch liberal and strong matriarchal influences in her upbringing, it comes as no surprise that she felt both a duty and ability to tackle social, artistic, and gendered barriers, soon becoming a pillar of the Wakefield community. One of her first local endeavours, in 1887, garnering huge interest and success, was the establishment of the Guild of Pity. Whilst the name now of the fund might appear to contain a hint of condescension, in the context of late Victorian England prior to the formation of a welfare state, the Guild of Pity was a forward-thinking and modern endeavour. In its first year, Lady Catherine recruited 200 people, producing over 600 good-quality garments to clothe the disadvantaged of Wakefield, and continued to host annual meetings at Thornes House, eventually averaging 300 guests and 800 garments for distribution each year around the city. Alongside establishing the Guild of Pity, Lady Catherine began gathering plans to set up a convalescent home in Lupset for women and children. Her endeavour came to fruition a year later, and the home became a respite for Wakefield's women and girls who needed a safe environment in which to recuperate, whether from the workhouse or a damaging domestic situation. This, in particular, displays Lady Catherine's commitment to the protection and uplifting of women, and her recognition that a safe space where women could be nurtured would go a long way in supporting their well-being. By 1901, Lady Catherine was so committed to her community work within Wakefield that she declared her occupation as Poor Law Guardian in the census. Her contributions towards helping Wakefield's children extended to her providing milk every Sunday for those in the workhouse and Clayton Hospital as part of the free breakfast mission, and in 1902 we see the first mention of her work running the Scatter Home scheme, which in its first instance took 60 orphans from the workhouse and in groups placed them with foster parents. Lady Catherine was reported in the Yorkshire Post and Leeds Intelligentsia on Thursday the 2nd of January 1902 to have said to the children leaving the workhouse, "We cannot give you, my dear children, a real home, a real mother, or a real father, but we are doing our best to bring you under the influences of home, to make you feel that life is worth living. There is only one way to be happy, and that is to be good." In the years leading up to and during the First World War, Lady Catherine was instrumental in the formation and organising of Wakefield's volunteer aid detachments, and by extension, the first St John's Ambulance Corps in the whole county. These organisations trained civilians to provide nursing care in the event that it was needed by military personnel. In 1911, an article from the Leeds Mercury tells us that the registration of the St John's Ambulance Association happened at Thorne's house under the invitation and instigation of Lady Catherine. This was the first of many such organisations for which Lady Catherine not only paved the way, but became president of. In 1919, she assisted her daughter Mary in publishing a cookery book of nearly 750 recipes, the proceeds of which went to the purchasing of soldiers' uniforms and to the Disabled Soldiers Fund. It was all this work that earned her the Order of St John of Jerusalem, a British Royal Order of Chivalry, first given in 1888 by Royal Charter from Queen Victoria. Its most notable recipient was Florence Nightingale. And later, when a law was passed in 1919, allowing women to be appointed to the position of magistrate and justice of the peace, Lady Catherine was one of the first to be appointed. As if all this wasn't enough for us to be inspired by her, Lady Catherine was also a great patron of the arts. A report in the Leeds Mercury on Thursday the 23rd of May 1907 includes a story of Horace Potts, who was a Wakefield tram driver with a powerful singing voice. Upon hearing him, Lady Catherine spotted his potential as a tenor and took him to an eminent voice specialist in London, who promised to train him at no cost. Covering all possible barriers to his success, Lady Catherine appealed for donations for a maintenance living fund so that he could stay and pursue a career in opera. Amongst all this community work, managing Thorne's house, and having 2 children, Lady Catherine didn't allow her own artistic expressions to be quashed. Her upbringing surrounded by literary giants obviously had its impact, as throughout her life she published a total of 9 books, as well as numerous long essays and articles. In an 1889 essay entitled Women of Today, Catherine discusses the expectations placed on women in the late 19th century. She explored how standards of women's education were rising, and as a result there was greater expectation on them to be equally competent and intellectual as men, while still maintaining the position of housewife, wife, mother, and housekeeper. She argued women were now expected to be perfect at every task she performed, and ensure that time for leisure activities and her family were still available as well. She proposed the time of women was never thought of as sacred, and women of all classes are short of time to feed their souls due to the duties and expectations of running day-to-day life. This is something that men don't understand or notice, and when they do, they are quick to discount it as trivial. Despite this essay being 130 years old, it seems surprisingly resonant even in 2020. Whilst Catherine acknowledges that her position as an upper-class woman granted her more privilege and freedom in choosing how she spent her time, in her case dedicating much of it to charity work, even as one of the most privileged women in the country, her time was never valued the same as a man's. Had this not been true, I think it likely that Catherine Milnes Gaskell's name would be better known in the city she devoted much of her life towards helping. I think this is why I find this essay particularly interesting. She seems completely aware that the patriarchal system we live in would forget about her contributions to improving the lives of Wakefield citizens after her time had passed, and it inspires me to share her story wider and louder in opposition of this. From the early 1900s, Catherine was writing and having books published every few years. Her first in 1904 was entitled Old Shropshire Life, and in 1907 she wrote and had published Prose Idylls of the West Riding. Lady Catherine's keen observation and attention to detail is clear in these novels. Set in the heart of Shropshire and Yorkshire respectively, the seats of the Milnes Gaskells, many of them are odes to the local characteristics and dialects she was surrounded by and so keenly loved to record. In a bid to entertain her guests throughout the years, Lady Catherine wrote a sizable collection of plays to be performed by family and friends. In 1903, these were put together in a volume published as The New Cinderella and Other Plays. We can imagine that among those entertained by these plays were the authors, poets, and artists Catherine inherited as lifelong friends from her parents' literary hub, such as Turn of the Screw author Henry James, Thomas Hardy, and her husband's close friend and confidant, Henry Brooks Adams, who was the grandson of John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, and great-grandson of John Adams, the 2nd President. Being incredibly politically astute, her role in her brother's successful political campaign to win a seat for the Liberal Party in 1880 did not go unreported in the local and national press. She revisited this role campaigning for her husband Charles, who became MP for Morley in 1885. In addition to this, she wrote and had published several letters to newspapers about the issues women faced in Ireland, pushing the boundaries of what gendered societal constraints deemed acceptable topics for women to publicly discuss. Following her husband's death in 1919, Lady Catherine made the Shropshire residence Wenlock Abbey her permanent home, and a few years later, Thorne's House had become a grammar school. She continued to write articles and stories well into the 1930s, until she passed away aged 78 in January 1935. A few days after Lady Catherine's death was announced in the Times, an acquaintance wrote in with a eulogy which highlighted her impressive literary career and wartime work. A section of it reads, "In the war, Lady Catherine worked untiringly for the wounded men in hospitals in the West Riding of Yorkshire. From the sale of her book, Lady Anne's Fairy Tales, she raised funds for 2 beds in the War Hospital at Etap. She cared greatly for all social schemes for the benefit of young people. She spoke well and had done much public work during her life, but what she liked best was to do personal kindnesses wherever she felt she could help." In light of the wealth of aid Wakefield received from Lady Catherine's call to arms and organisation, the literary work she left behind, and the artistic hub she nurtured, many members of whom were some of the largest names of the late Victorian age, it is deflating to think that her legacy has been buried in the region she lived and wrote so fondly about. Now the people of Wakefield can challenge the Wikipedia article, which claims she was merely a minor author married to Charles Milnes Gaskell. Lady Catherine was, in fact, a visionary, a campaigner against injustice, a political activist, and an extremely accomplished writer who overcame the obstacles of Victorian upper-class domesticity and sought to make her voice heard. Lady Catherine, you are no longer forgotten. Catherine's achievements by no means are constrained to the contents of my speech. I had to narrow it down to what I thought were the most important points for 15 or so minutes. But if you want more information, you can look at the Forgotten Women of Wakefield website. You can carry on and watch the play that we're about to show. And you can also read Cynthia Gamble's Wenlock Abbey, which is a book about the Milnes Gaskells' second home in Shropshire. There's a lot of information about their literary circle. I hope you feel inspired by Lady Catherine's story. I certainly have over the last 2 years. It's so exciting that today we get to unveil her blue plaque and see her achievements publicly celebrated and enshrined. I hope you also enjoy the play and spread the word about the amazing women our city boasts. That's all for me. Enjoy the rest of the celebrations.
Uh-oh.
Henry. Good Lord, Henry, what is she doing here?
Florence Beaumont, the suffragist leader, Charles. I understand Lady Catherine is more than sympathetic to the cause.
God.
But it appears she is merely here in order to put decorations up for the evening. Yes. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I say, Charles, have you seen this portrait of a very important man over here?
Oh, say.
Oh, no.
Oh, Lord Henry, what the... These women do realize they are not invited here?
The lovely Miss Mary Clarkson, Charles. One of the first women to sign the suffragist petition of 1866. Yes, I understand she and your dear wife are rather adepts at gathering funds in order for the poor of our society to access education, Charles. She's also in cahoots with Miss McCrobin in founding the first city history library, which Catherine has also greatly contributed to. But nothing to worry about, for I believe she is here merely to provide further decoration for the evening. Nothing to worry about. Oh, I say, have you seen this portrait of a rather very important man?
Oh.
What the... Daisy?
Isn't that the servant girl from the house? I see she has more decorations. you know.
Yes, she can read now, Daisy, thanks to your good lady wife. She's in training to become a nurse at the Victoria District Institute. Well looked after by Lady Catherine, of course, as vice president. Between Mrs. Mackey and your dear spouse, the poor of this town get all the medical attention they deserve. Doesn't she look well? It's the free breakfast she got as a child from the breakfast mission Lady Catherine continues to support. Oh, Daisy is a pretty young thing. I captured a fine image of her earlier by Miss Anne's fountain.
Yes, well, Henry, I'm not sure the art of photography will ever replace real art. Here, let me show you what I mean. Have you ever seen such dignity captured in a man than in this very important portrait? Oh, my word.
Would you like a drink, Mr. James?
I see Matthew is here as my guardsman. Matthew, would you mind escorting the ladies out once they are finished with their decorations? It's not appropriate that they are here once things start, you know?
Yes, sir. Of course, sir.
A good lad, then. Orphan, don't you know, huh? A fine product of a Lady Catherine Scatterhome scheme. Her ladyship remains one of the most able poor law guardians in the city, does she not, Charles?
Well, she keeps bringing them to the kitchen door. I fear for the silver.
Oh, quite.
Indeed you do. I say, Charles, have I ever told you about the short story I wrote based on this very important man over here?
Right.
Oh, dear.
What is she doing here? This is getting ridiculous. My guests are starting to arrive.
Charles,
I don't want them
calm
being
yourself,
reminded
Charles.
of that scandal.
Ada Speak is merely here to assist in the decorations.
Oh,
I hear she's getting along well in society now, thanks to generosity on behalf of Miss Anne Aston. And of course, her work with Lady Catherine and the Guild of Pity is invaluable. The garments she stitches for the poor of this town are of the finest quality.
Yes, Lady Catherine is always happy to help those less fortunate than ourselves. This is true. But I do wish all these ladies would leave. Why is Matthew not escorting them out?
Indeed. How about we spend a minute with our dear friend over here? I know how very important he was to you and to the great city of Wakefield, Charles.
Indeed.
Oh, my! It's the animal lady!
Miss Louisa Clarkson, of course, the very spitting image of her Aunt Anne. Ah, yes. Her love of animals is well known throughout the town.
This is getting ridiculous now, Henry. I must put a stop to this right now.
Calm yourself, Charles. Lady Catherine's love of animals is also well known. Let us not go spilling the apple cart on your big night, eh? Besides, I believe they are merely here in order to put the finishing touches to the decorations in honor of you.
Yes. Well, Lady Catherine is very active in the RSPCA, and Lord knows we've enough dogs. There's a graveyard full of them in the grounds of Thorne's house. Remarkable woman, my wife. I've lost count of how many presidencies Lady Catherine holds. I'd like to raise a glass to my wife.
Here you are, sir.
To Lady Catherine.
To Lady Catherine.
Oh, damn fine wine, that. What of Fennels?
Indeed it is, sir.
The Fennels. I believe they were involved in the Guild of Pity around the same time Miss Catherine was president. Yes, and the Clarksons as well.
Yeah, damn fine wine cellar that chap Fennel runs. My wife has a piece by Miss Fennel in her study. Louisa Fennel, I believe.
Yes, indeed. And what a shame it was that Miss Fennel was not commissioned to paint your portrait, Charles.
A woman doing my portrait, Henry? Don't be absurd!
Oh, my, oh, my, oh, dear, oh, dear.
Well, this could get interesting. Keep your master happy and his glass full, Mr. Gerald, please.
Gerald.
My lord, may I say what a wonderful likeness this portrait is, and a
yes.
fitting tribute to your achievements. What would we have done without your vision and your ability to use such insight to help and better mankind?
Well, yes, quite, Gerald, yes, thank you. May I say thank you for your work here this evening, especially after the exuberance of this afternoon's dedication ceremony to the St. John Ambulance Corps. However, I do wish these ladies would leave. Why is Matthew not escorting them out? Go and get Matthew, Gerald.
Oh, I say, Charles, this is absolute genius. You know,
Yes,
I've just been talking with some of the gentlemen and Mr. King who just arrived. My, they are impressed that the ladies seem to be here. Oh, I think it's about time we drug all of these draconian institutions into this century, don't you? It is 1910 after all, Charles.
Well, yes, quite. Welcome, esteemed members of the community, to this momentous occasion.
And so, I am delighted to dedicate this evening's celebrations for her work in our town, for her never-ending fundraising efforts for the poor and disadvantaged. Lady Catherine's contributions to our society must never be forgotten. And so, it is with the greatest pleasure that we gift her this token of our appreciation in honour of her work.
Oh, thank you, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, dear.
Welcome to the Dreamtime Creative Space, but most importantly, welcome to the actors, or as I like to call them, actors, of Lady Catherine. Lady Catherine. So we actually have Lady Catherine here. Wonderful. Do you want to do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Suzanne, and I was very fortunate to play Lady Catherine.
Brilliant. And we have the wonderful...
I'm Gabriel. I played Henry James.
And we have the wonderful...
I'm Amy Louise, and I played Mrs. King.
And the unbelievably wonderful...
I'm Emma, and I directed this lovely little piece with these fabulous people, and I also played Florence Beaumont.
Yeah, so, and I'm Sarah Cobham, and I actually wrote Lady Catherine, and you will be seeing the last scene of Lady Catherine as part of this production today. So, we're all here. Believe it or not, none of us are in special costume. We always dress in Victoriana anyway, mostly.
Mostly.
Of course we do.
This is a ranch version of Victoriana.
Absolutely. So, costumes for Lady Catherine. Amy, you came kitted out in your costume, but you also came with something very special, and you brought it with you today. Can you tell us a bit about the background to that?
So, when I spoke to my mum about what the play was about and what we were doing, she went, "Oh, I've got something of your granddad's that you might be interested in." When I said about my character and how she was part of the St John ambulance, and she pulled this out, and I was like, "Oh, wow." And looking at the dates in it, it was actually from the period that the play was set. And it's got like all the original pricings of the uniforms, of like the badges, the kits and all the terminology in there. It's got all the like patrons of the St John ambulance. And I was just literally gobsmacked when she gave it to me. I was like, what? What's going on?
Absolutely, and of course Lady Catherine set up the first St John Ambulance Brigade and financed the uniforms and the training herself. So when Amy turned up with this book, we all just went, wow, Lady Catherine is with us. Did you find that Lady Catherine was channeling through you, Susie, at all?
Yes. I mean, we did a bit of research, so we did Emma and Tony took me on a walk to where Thorne's house used to sit. Unfortunately, it's no longer there anymore. We saw her graves of her dogs, because she was a huge animal lover, and she loved all her dogs, and she used to give them graves, and she had one particular one called Mouse, and you can still see his or her, I don't know if it's his or her grave there in the grounds of Thorne's house. But yes, definitely, I think that comes through research, and as you say, with a costume as well. Suddenly, when you put a costume on from that period of time, you kind of step back in time yourself. Yeah. And it helps the way that you move and the way that you walk and everything. So yes, I think
channeling
so.
her.
I think so. I like to think so.
And sort of talking about research, I think it's really important to honour Antonia Stevenson, who did all of the research, and you'll have seen her presentation about Lady Catherine as part of this event. But one of my favourite lines that you won't see, because it's coming out as part of the whole film that's being premiered in a few weeks' time, one of your favourite lines was, "Mouse! Mouse!" And of course, as people from Wakefield, if you walk through Thorns Park, you will come across these gravestones, and they've got these inscriptions on them. And Lady Catherine was a huge patron of animal welfare, and she worked very much with the Clarkson sisters and in setting up the first RSPCA in the city as well, and one of the first in the country. But you two have got a great relationship. Do you want to explain your characters' relationship first of all? Because coincidentally, Gabe is American, and British at the same time, but has an American accent. But you're
Semi-skimmed milk.
Indeed. So your character was American, so it just everything kind of aligned. Do you want to share a little bit about that relationship?
They have a very banterous relationship, Lady Catherine and Henry. It's very tender relationship. It's very very special. They both clearly understand each other very, very well. And even though Henry puts Catherine into some awkward situations at time to time.
And vice versa, I think. I think they both challenge each other hugely, but there's a really beautiful relationship between the two of them, like completely platonic, but it's they just
I think Catherine definitely curtails a lot of the Henryness, the kind of the unruliness that she isn't really used to and everything, but.
Yeah.
And he is a bit unruly, isn't he? And you
very much so.
You have also have a great relationship with your on-screen husband, which is Charles Milnes Gaskell. Yeah. And behind the scenes, you guys had a really quite amusing friendship. It was a bit of a boy thing going on, and we were like, are both of those boys in the area, or are they being special together? So we were playing with Tom was playing Charles Milnes Gaskell, wasn't he?
Ah, Tom.
Tom, what do you remember about Tom?
What don't we remember about Tom? Tom is the most Victorian-looking man I've ever seen on a street. The first time I met him was at the Clara premiere last year, and he was top-hatted. Outside the door. He was an absolute natural, as Charles, I think we can all say.
Lived and breathed it.
It was a real treat to see him getting through every scene and just going through the story and kind of having his comeuppance.
Yeah.
At the end. Exactly.
Yes, because at the end we actually find out that Florence, played by the lovely Emma, and Lady Catherine, obviously played by Susie, were a little bit in cahoots to enable Charles to get his comeuppance. Emma, can you talk us through a little bit with regards to Florence's role in the hoo-ha that took place at the end?
Florence, such a little no, she's not a troublemaker at all. She's a wonderful, wonderful, strong-willed character. So Florence is a little bit of an orchestrator with Lady Catherine's help and resources, and the end scene comes about as a kind of a nod, a thank you to Lady Catherine, everything that she's done for the city of Wakefield, for everybody who's ever been underprivileged or denied anything. She's been this amazing kind of beacon for the city. And Florence thinks this needs to be marked with something very significant. So she kind of usurps Charles's little soiree for her own ends to make it about Lady Catherine, with everybody else's help and everybody else's good intentions. And they succeed. It's very wonderfully, quickly done. And Charles, bless him, right to the very end, he thinks it's all for him, and the admiration, the adulation, and the clapping and the applause, and everybody's turned out for me, and it's really about my wife.
Yeah. And
Isn't
of course,
she wonderful?
Yeah, and then in comes Mrs. King at the end. Amy, how did you feel about bringing that final energy into this? What Charles thought was for him, but we obviously the viewer is in cahoots. We realise it's actually for Lady Catherine by now. How did you feel as an actor bringing that in?
It felt quite honourable that I got to say that piece, that thank you. It was quite kind of emotional at first reading it as well, and then adding that power to it, because that's what she deserves. She deserves that recognition, that power, that strength from all those women that were there. And it was just a beautiful ending, and how she carried on as well, and how she kept going, and it was so honourable to be able to say that thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Does anybody have any kind of, when you lie in bed at night and these little memories come in and you go, oh, I just remember that offset, and I just really wish I was. Does anybody have anything that stayed with them? Emma?
Nothing to do with any of the filming. Our DOP went to take a leak in the camping toilet.
The area.
In the area, and the whole of the tarpaulin fell down around him. So he was just stood in front of us all going, hi.
Sean here.
And that just
totally missed that. I didn't know that.
No!
Yeah.
that will stick in my mind for quite a while because he was so kind of nonchalant and
It held up so well in the weather.
just watching me take the lead.
We were facing many really quite challenging situations because of COVID. So we filmed. Emma was constantly saying 2 meters, 2 meters. If she saw anybody get a little bit close, I mean, we just constantly sprang apart. So to film, when you see the film, it looks as if we are sitting together, but it's tricks really, and that is down to great vision from the director and obviously the director of photography as well, but also the way you guys, you just complied, and I have to say, it was rehearsed in lockdown completely separately over Zoom, in gardens with 12 feet apart, and it was filmed over one weekend because we needed to get it done and dusted. So I'm really proud of what you all did, and as the writer, I'm immensely proud of the final achievement. But I interrupted. Did anybody else have any memories? I'm lying in bed at night.
That one by shot.
No, yeah.
Just dear Murray trying to get the OD.
Oh dear!
Yes.
That was my favourite bit of filming.
my
That was
God,
definitely the
that
best
was
shot.
brilliant.
Didn't it sound like it was going on for hours, just like ringing in the back?
But in the end, we all were just saying it with him, like,
Oh dear, oh
Every
dear, oh dear.
moment.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I wrote Lady Catherine as a farce. So that's kind of comic timing, and that often only comes really with a company of actors that have worked together a long time. So the crew and the actors, you all just pulled together and got that synergy going. And I think that you can see that in the film. So you've all seen the last section, haven't you? Haven't seen. So we've got a few members of an audience here. So I was just wondering if there were any questions from the audience to the panel.
I'd like to ask, I was really surprised by your connection, your family tree connection to Lady Catherine and her legacy of setting up the first St John's Ambulance Brigade. Did any other of you feel that connection in your own lives?
Well, I can certainly tell you that as the writer, all of the characters channeled through me, and since finishing that script, what I thought were creative interpretations of the connections between the characters have actually been proved to be accurate historically. So I did not know, for example, that the Clarksons had such a close relationship with Lady Catherine. And I certainly didn't know that Florence was involved with the Clarksons as well. But I'd written that in. And so when Helga Fox, and I have to say very clearly that not only Antonia Stevenson, but Helga Fox, our lead researcher on the Forgotten Women of Wakefield project, when she was constantly pinging these things over, my jaw drops. I'm like, oh my, how is this, everything that I imagined is actually happened in the past? So we do feel, I feel really as the director of Dreamtime Creative and the Forgotten Women of Wakefield, that we are led by these women. Take of that what you want, but when you work in a really creative industry, where do you think that inspiration comes from? It doesn't come from office blocks, it comes from, walking our medieval streets. Our streets in Wakefield were incredibly lucky because our women walked on the sets that are still in some of the yards. You can almost catch their footsteps, you can almost catch their footsteps and hear them. So why can't we connect with their stories? But that blew us away, didn't it?
Yeah.
We all just went, no! Has anybody else got goosebumps? Yeah, goosebumps. Oh my God! Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Does anybody else have feel like there was a connection?
I did quite a lot of research into Florence, as you know, before actually this Lady Catherine came about, and Florence for me was particularly interesting and remarkable for all sorts of reasons, as well as the other forgotten women of Wakefield. They're all incredible in their own right. But I did drag Susie along and showed her all the bits that I'd found, all the bits and pieces. I was like, oh look, she lived here, and then she walked here, and then she did this, and she must have come here. So we did a big recce, didn't we?
Yeah.
As well as the what that we did with Antonia about Lady Catherine.
Yeah.
I also kind of, because once you've learned about these women, how incredibly amazing they were, you actually want to share that package with everybody.
Yeah,
You want to kind of, and because you then, having done the play, you had a basis of knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's when you go, right, I want to grow from it now. I want to kind of build on what I've learned, and I want to identify with these women. And yeah, the only way you can do that is if you immerse yourself. And that's the wonderful thing about being an actor. You get to immerse yourself in these people's lives. And it's, like you said, it's honourable.
Yeah.
It is such an honour to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's being introduced to those people, because a lot of people won't even know who these women are.
Exactly.
And this is an amazing platform for people to be introduced to these women who have not had that opportunity before. You know, like for me, I didn't know who these women were before this, and only in bed last night I was just thinking. I was literally just thinking. It was a thought that came to my head, and I was just thinking, wow, my great grandma was alive at the same time as Lady Catherine, and also lived in Yorkshire, and I was thinking, I wonder if she knew of this woman. And it's just little thoughts like that that you think, wow, I wonder if she actually knew of this woman, that this woman was just living down the road and was doing these amazing things. And did she know of Lady Catherine? I'm sure she didn't. Maybe she did know her, I don't know. But I'm sure she knew of her. So it's just, it starts to inspire you.
Yeah. It's a bit spooky, isn't it? And I just sort of want to ask Gabe, really, you know, you're born and brought up in Wakefield.
It's really incredible to see, you know, behind all these women's stories, what they've done that still just rings like true throughout the whole town, you know. And I think this project, more than anything, is just bringing, you know, real true awareness to these women that needs to be out there, because they are the unsung heroes of our city. And being around them and immersing ourselves in the stories and the characters, it's so rewarding to be able to sort of see those relationships and how they came to influence everything around us, you know, today.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And the characters. They're
fun
just
too. They're
brilliant.
fun.
Did you enjoy the writing, Gabe?
Oh,
the game.
So
the right. Oh, there's a writer in the room.
You brought them to life.
Thank you.
And that's just an amazing thing.
Yeah. I do feel, you know, why have I started this? The irony is, in my own family tree, I can actually link myself, my bloodline, to 3 of our forgotten women. Bizarrely, you know, I was born and brought up in Australia, but my family are British, and yet I have a direct connection to Gertrude McCroban. There's a link to Clara Clarkson, and there's a link to Louisa Fennell. So, you know, through generations back. So you have to think, why would I even be doing this? Where does this come from? And it's like its own episode of Who Do You Think You Are? If anybody wants to film me. Anyway, so we'll bring this to a close, and I just want to thank everybody for your continued support. The people of Wakefield have completely thrown themselves, and thank you for throwing yourselves behind this project. And it just makes everybody feel really good and really proud that it's in our DNA, that quirkiness, that passion, that, well, I'm going to do it anyway, that creativity. It comes from people like Lady Catherine, and I just think it's in the air, it's in the air that we breathe, and it's in the soil that we walk on. So I want to thank you wonderful actors, for coming along today and sharing your experiences. Thank you.
As with any wonderful project like this, there are always an equally amount of wonderful people to thank. Thanks go to Claire Pickering for her vision in gaining an Arts Council grant to allow Dreamtime Creative to look at Lady Catherine so closely in order to support the unfinished business exhibition at the library. To all the actors who worked so hard in a socially distanced manner to produce such a magnificent film and under extremely difficult conditions. To Claire and Chris Bagley for allowing the use of their large garden for filming.
To friends of chat, without whom Lady Catherine's plaque would not have a home, she's going to be on the old gardener's cottage in the Rose Garden at Thorne's House. To Wakefield Council's belief in the vision of Dreamtime Creative and the Forgotten Women of Wakefield project, who in a few short years will have achieved its vision of making us the first city to have blue plaque parity. To Wakefield Civic Society for their continued support of the vision, and to all the researchers across the land who collaborated and shared resources to bring Lady Catherine's story to life. And of course to Dreamtime Creative and Sarah Cobham for her passion, energy and belief in this remarkable woman and all the other remarkable women in the series. She's given them a voice, and the plaque means that they have a permanent place in our heritage and they will not be forgotten. We're also very sorry that Lady Catherine's relative, William Motley, and his partner couldn't be here today due to COVID restrictions. Lady Catherine is the 12th plaque in the Forgotten Women of Wakefield series, and so it's with the greatest honour that I'd like to present this blue plaque to Lady Catherine Milnes Gaskell, to the people of Wakefield, and I look forward to viewing it in the Rose Garden at Thorne's Park.